If you're trans, get the popcorn right. If you're cis, get the notepad. Hello all you beautiful people, I'm Mizzz Sally Pryde. This is with 3 Z's and a Y, because why not? And in this video, we're going to be talking about Shrek. Shrek famously opens up with Shrek tearing out pages from a storybook and using it as toilet paper for his outhouse, which apparently flushes. But that's besides the point. When Shrek is ripping up those storybook pages, he is inherently ripping up cisnormativity and heteronormativity that exists within society. Gender roles and heteronormativity are very heavily tied into fairy tales, especially when it comes to Disney. I love how this film is a giant you to Disney, because a lot of what Disney stood for, at least originally, was preserving gender norms and heteronormativity, and this film really says you to that message. And it does that in a few ways. For one, it subverts the fairy tale stories, notably Beauty and the Beast. And if you haven't seen my previous video, what cis people can learn from Beauty and the Beast, I highly recommend you see that. Link should be somewhere on screen. It's a very stereotypical story that starts off here. That a knight is supposed to rescue Fiona, a man rescuing a woman, in the tallest room of the tallest tower. Shrek is literally wiping a donkey with these stories because they mean that little to him. This makes sense for Shrek. Shrek is a social outcast, like many queer people. He lives alone and likes his privacy. Now, if you understood what I was saying about gender roles in fairy tales, well, then you should understand that sex and gender are different, because I didn't make any anatomical or chromosomal references during that time. It's gender. Shrek is confronted by an angry mob because, you know, he's an ogre and they try to attack him. And as a trans woman on the internet, I get harassed a lot. And these mobs that come after Shrek honestly remind me of them. And there was even this one comment which said I look like Fiona. And when Shrek is attacked as an ogre, what it symbolizes is that Shrek is not seen as human. Which, technically, he's not a human. But the idea there is, historically and currently, queer people and minorities in general have been marginalized by being treated as something non-human. People call me a monster all the time, and it is very reminiscent of these scenes in Shrek. Minorities in general, and specifically queer people in this case, have been oppressed in part due to the fact that we're not always recognized as human beings. His, I guess, humanity or ogreness is ignored because they only see him as a monster and refuse to see the soul underneath. If you're enjoying this video so far, consider giving a like and letting me know down in the comments if you got any ideas for other movies I should talk about on here. So then Shrek meets Donkey, and they're very similar in the fact that they're both social outcasts and they stick up for each other. Well, mainly Shrek sticks up for Donkey, but they get to know each other and understand each other as social outcasts. Shrek is a social outcast for how he looks, and Donkey is a social outcast because, well, people find him annoying. I've been told both. If you find me annoying, why the f are you watching this? Shrek's life is uprooted when a huge crowd of fairy tale creatures comes to his doorstep, disturbing his privacy. And they were sent there because Lord F***wad decided to sign an eviction notice. And yes, I am pronouncing it that way, because I think it's funnier. And if you want to hear me say that uncensored, you can sign up for my Patreon. Plans are as low as $3 a month, and you can sign up at patreon.com/SallyPrydeDirect. Thank you to my patrons for helping make this possible. You can watch this video uncensored and extended. So Lord F***wad, he really is a f***wad, because, like, seriously, signing an eviction notice on people like that? If we've learned anything over the last few years, it's that landlords suck. Shrek makes the famous point about onions having layers. Onions have layers, that there is depth to them. And that's a good surface level analogy. But I think we can take this analogy a little bit further. Most people are not going to be eating a raw onion unless it's on like a sandwich or something and it's masked up and you can't really taste it in its full capacity. But most people will eat onions if it's cooked in something. And I think that's a good analogy for queerness as a whole. That for a lot of us, before we transitioned, we weren't very good people. We were kind of bad to ourselves and bad to other people. And, well, when we start to be good to ourselves, then we're good to other people. I like to think about it this way. You can't be good to other people unless you're good to yourself. It's like how when you're on an airplane, they tell you you need to put your air mask on before assisting other people. And there's a reason for that. You need to put the mask on first because you need to make sure you have clear enough thoughts to help someone else. When you're not being good to yourself, not being your authentic self, that hurts you and hurts those around you. People in my life who knew me before I transitioned, well, they've told me just how happier I am. And I've also become much more charitable and kind to other people as a result. How can you be kind to other people if you don't even want to live to the next day? I transitioned. I wanted to live. I wanted to live to see the next day. And that gave me a reason to be kind to other people. Transitioning saved my life and it made me kinder to others. Coming out as trans and transitioning is not being selfish. It's doing what you need to do for yourself, which in turn helps those around you. Like Mark Zuckerberg, Lord of Wad controls everything, including Facebook. Shrek is honestly more relatable than a lot of the dramas out there. And Wad wants to have this tournament, and Shrek beats all the knights, and then takes on the task of trying to rescue Fiona. And the line he uses is, "Some of you will die, but it's a sacrifice I'm willing to make." Couldn't think of anything more on point for a rich person to say in this case. And Wad's first reaction to seeing Shrek is honestly very reminiscent of experiences I've had. It's in the same line of thinking of Shrek's prior experiences. He's called disgusting and calls for a tournament against him, literally trying to kill the guy and embarrass him. Because, people try to do that all the time to me. Because, nothing says I'm a good Christian quite like telling trans people that you want to break the sixth commandment on them. I relate a lot more to an ogre than I do most movie characters, and I think that's saying something. What this shows is, while Shrek can stand up for himself, it is exhausting for him, and I definitely get that as a trans woman. For me, it's sort of exhausting to have to keep doing this. On the other hand, I know how to stand up for myself and know how to stand up for myself well. Lord F***wad is literally able to coerce Shrek by stealing his land in order to get him to do what he wants, because he has the wealth and resources to do that. Later in the film, he even gets a wedding dress same day, and that really just shows off his level of wealth. Believe it or not, we actually have a trans character in this film. Drumroll, please. The Big Bad Wolf. And I honestly love this subversion that we have a character who is trans in a children's film, let alone 2001. While they never use the word trans, in fact, in Shrek 2 they use a problematic term. You can even see at the wedding at the end, the wolf is with a knight, meaning that at the very least, there is canonical queerness here. Even if you don't believe this character is trans, there is canonical queerness here. We'll talk a little bit more about the wolf at the end, but put a pin in that. Of course, Lord F***wad literally seals the magic mirror, which yeah, and he chooses Fiona from a lineup, which again leans into this sort of idea of the patriarchy there, that he is choosing his mate and she's not choosing him, which is honestly a staple of fairy tale literature. Look at Rapunzel, Sleeping Beauty, Snow White. All of them feature a woman being rescued by a man. And well, that's not really a good idea, especially if you want to show a healthy relationship. And what I really like about this is that it's a consenting state. Fiona wants to date Shrek, and Shrek wants to date Fiona. It doesn't seem to me like Shrek or Fiona is overpowered in this relationship. There are equal parts in this relationship. As shown later in the film, Fiona is like this too. While she's in a human form, she takes ogre form at night. And she still faces the stigma of being an ogre. She feels ashamed of being an ogre, even around Shrek, who will accept her because, he's also an ogre. The analogy we can use here is internalized transphobia. Trans people often experience transphobia as well. Internalized is, for the most part, that some of us, like Caitlyn Jenner, aren't good to the community outwardly, where that's a form of internalized transphobia, that she is transphobic despite being trans and out as trans. However, for most trans people, we actually go through a long period of internalized transphobia. I did myself, where I hated who I was and hated trans people as a whole. But the more I learned about trans people, I started to become more accepting, and then that taught me a little bit more about myself and understood the feelings I was having are normal, healthy, and shouldn't be something I'm ashamed of. And the song, I Don't Give a Damn About My Reputation, is a good representation of Shrek in a nutshell. Shrek doesn't give a shit what other people think of him. He just cares that he's his authentic self. And honestly, that's what we should all be striving for. I think as trans people in particular, we should be doing that. And if you're a cis person watching this, let trans people do that and help them do that. Help them be their most authentic selves and talk to them. And if you want to learn more about how to be a great trans ally, I have a video, Top 10 Ways to be a Great Trans Ally, with examples. Throughout this film, Shrek is specifically being called disgusting a lot. Unless you count the bathing in mud stuff, he's really not disgusting. And I also think it's pretty funny that Donkey brings up cakes in this example because, you know, asexuals. The only people who don't like cakes are liars. And even with the analogy of cakes also have layers, the thing is, cakes are very similar to onions in that way. Most people aren't going to eat an onion whole. Likewise, most people aren't going to eat the ingredients of a cake whole, unless you're on Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And like, even Shrek knows the story of the tallest room in the tallest tower from the book, and he believes it. Which, I mean, how accurate is the book on everything else? Not so much, but Fiona is genuinely shocked to see Shrek, because she had been believing her entire life that someone who was not an ogre would rescue her. And well, that didn't happen. And as seen in Shrek 2, Fiona had been thinking about this long since childhood. And not supposed to be an ogre is both a reflection on Shrek, but also herself. That she's not supposed to be an ogre, and she was locked away for being an ogre. And this is often true, where queer people were hidden away, and our stories aren't always told or written down. That's why history on queer people is so hard to find. But it's there. If you want to learn more about queer history, I even made YouTube shorts talking about queer history during Pride Month, so if you want to see that, link's somewhere on screen for that playlist. And Fiona, once she's rescued and eating and getting more comfortable with Shrek, she's breaking gender norms by burping. Now women can burp too, like this. Now that was a sound effect. That wasn't me actually burping because, well, I don't feel like burping right now. I can't burp that well. But Fiona is, in fact, breaking a gender role, especially when you think about where she comes from in a high-class society where women in particular aren't supposed to be burping, or at least not publicly. Fiona, going against societal expectations of what standard beauty is supposed to look like, is showing that off. She is embracing herself and, in fact, breaking gender norms in the process. It doesn't matter how you look. It doesn't matter if you're beautiful or not. What matters is that you're beautiful on the inside. And I know that's an overused cliche, but when you're beautiful on the inside and believe that to be true, well, your beauty will radiate outwards. I know it's an outdated trope, but, like, I feel like this movie really encapsulates that. Although, to be fair, I actually kind of prefer the ogre version of Fiona to the human version of Fiona. Just something about the human version of Fiona seems a little bit off to me in terms of looks, but maybe that's because she's a human animated in 2001. They're almost abducted by Robin Hood, who in this case is actually a misogynist. Now, there have been many variations on Robin Hood, and I think Robin Hood is a very interesting case when talking about fairy tales and gender. He is a very stereotypical masculine example, but there have been iterations of him where he's gay, which is often seen as not a masculine trait, which isn't really true, but whatever. And the line, when a Beauty and the Beast, I get mad, which is very funny, especially considering we just talked about Beauty and the Beast. Fiona goes all Trinity on their donkeys, but I think they're just trying to make a point that she's not what she seems. She's been trapped up in that tower for a long time and has been practicing. And I know I've plugged a lot of videos here, but if you want to see my video that I did about the Matrix, click the link on screen. Fiona being an ogre, like, she sees herself as ugly, and her parents saw her as ugly, and that reinforced that stigma against her. Shrek overhears a conversation she has with Donkey, and he misinterprets what she says, and then gets brought over there to take her away. The song Hallelujah being used here, it's showing that living a lie is a tragedy. And that's true for trans people. When trans people can't live their authentic selves, I think of it as a tragedy. When anyone can't live their life, it is a tragedy. Everyone deserves that right to be who they are and be their most authentic self. And Fiona's true form, as revealed at the wedding, is an ogre. And I love the symbolism behind that, even a little bit more than Beauty and the Beast. It doesn't matter what you look like. It matters what's inside. Other people will likely judge you for how you look, but really, that's on them. They're missing out. In the end, what this shows is that fairy tale creatures, whether it be Shrek, Fiona, or the Big Bad Wolf, display gender differently and break those gender roles by breaking fairy tale traditions. And I really appreciate this. And as Shrek comes to show in the end, it doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter what other people think. All that matters is that you're happy and living your best life. And if other people don't like that, well, they can go f themselves. And if you want to help support me out even more, because, well, these videos are super expensive, you can support me on Patreon. Plans start as low as $3 a month at patreon.com/SallyPrydeDrag. On there, you can watch an extended version of this video with uncensored language. And you can also watch my comedy special, Pride and Joy, A Trans Story, where I talk about my journey being trans and make a lot of jokes along the way. It's a really fun story, and I really think you will enjoy it. Thank you so much for watching. Goodbye.